I guess we're doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Fly the Line episode 5. That is correct, this is our 5th official episode, and clearly it's a little bit different than the past 4 episodes. That is right, we have finally switched to a visual format, as per the request of so many valued viewers and fans. Yeah, I have been requested to do a little bit of a Joe Rogan type video podcast for so long. Do you guys want to see me? Do you guys not want to see me? Let's figure out after this episode. But I suppose this is a sort of a secondary pilot episode, I think, in the sense that we are trialing this new format. So today's episode is likely going to be a little bit shorter, and I've also, what I've actually done is I've actually made some notes. I know, I genuinely haven't made any notes for any of the past 4 episodes. That was just me rambling on and on. Hopefully today is going to sound a little less like a brain dump for me, and something more that y'all can follow along with and actually listen to. But yeah, well, let's get cracking. And today's episode, well, the title is called Love, Life, and the Fool's Game of Existence. And I will go into, each respective one of those in the, as this episode progresses. But what I actually wanted to do first is introduce, I suppose, where we are at. So this is, funnily enough, this right here is the only table in my house that will actually that I can mount this mic to. It's very funny. Almost all of the tables in my house, besides dining table, some bedroom dressers, and some other things, quite a few of our tables is actually made by my grandpa, and he likes to do some really elaborate designs on the sides of the tables. And just so happens that this mic mount is very thin. So that is why I'm sitting here and not at a proper desk. Seriously, because I don't have a proper desk. And plus, it's a comfier location for me anyways. So I hope you guys don't have any problem with it, because I sure don't. But talking about today. So the first topic on the bulletin is love. And there is far too much for me to talk about in love. I did promise that I would talk about it, at least attempt to broach the subject in episodes past, and I suppose this is where we are starting. But there is so much to talk about in this topic, and I'm going to be tackling just a very little part of it today. And funnily enough, it's going to be the very core of what it is, I think, to me. So I have to say, I am 16 years old, right? Just a disclaimer, I am 16 years of age. I am not even 17. I don't have my P's. That is how young I am. I know, I'm in year 12. But yeah, I'm not even 17 yet. And to be completely honest, I've only had, not even 2, I think 1 proper relationship in the past. As always, I will never ever name names nor give completely accurate information for the sake of mine and others' privacy. But oftentimes I've found myself thinking about different facets of it, and naturally I've had a wealth of other experiences in the field, none of which that I've continually pursued just because I'm busy. So I suppose take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, because what comes out of my mouth to a lot of people will seem more juvenile, right? I can't say that I've lived 40 years and experienced, the love of my life and had a family and a wife and kids. I don't know about that, but hopefully my juvenile experience is what some people need to hear. What I mean by that is the inherent stereotype that youth and, well, kids, we're more susceptible to do risk-taking. And that is something they drill into us in year 9 PE, year 10 PE. But I think it's a very important skill to have. Not even skill. I think just a general facet of life. Because I've talked about this extensively with people of different ages. My parents, my family, my grandparents, and just people all over the years. And what I have noted is, and what obviously everybody agrees on, is that as we get older, we become less willing to take risk, right? Because we have things that we are working for, stable lives that we are, I suppose, attempt to work towards and attempt to maintain. So, especially my father, he often tells me, if he was as young as I would, he would have a lot more opportunities and he would do a lot more drastic things. And I think I will go into that a little bit later. But considering that from, this 16-year-old's opinion, I want to actually bring that onto the topic of love. And to me, I think that love, but besides life, and I will chat about that later, love to me is one of the most finest forms of risk taking within life. And what I mean by that is I just want you to consider the whole idea of romance and romantic relationships with people. In essence, you kind of realize that the entire process of, I suppose, loving somebody and having an intimate romantic relationship, it all becomes about taking risks in various ways, shapes, and forms. And in fact, start wanting to pursue any form of relationship with anybody, whether that be platonic, romantic, everything, that is a risk in itself. Now, I actually wanted to talk about, so what then people will go, well, Dylan, if there is so much risk, right? If love and these relationships and inherently, almost all of these intangible things in life, if they're so unstable, then why should I take that risk, right? And obviously that is the dilemma that a lot of us face, and to be completely honest, something that I've faced lately, right? Why should I go for it if there is a big fat chance of me either failing and it's probably not going to work? And look, I have aspirations to go overseas anyways, right? So if I try and pursue a relationship when I'm in Sydney, what good will that do? Well, I actually wanted to talk about something, and it's bouncing off of a scene that from a very nice series. It's a British black comedy series that has Ricky Gervais in it, and he obviously one of the most fantastic English comedians. I absolutely love his cynic and his sarcastic delivery. But what he actually argues in one of the scenes, if I may, is that there is inherent beauty in instability, right? In ephemerality. And I think that's what a lot of people realize, but a lot of people don't seem to recognize fully, right? We say that often off the top of our heads. You go, oh, you have to, time is precious, life's precious, but nobody ever seems to put that into practice until it starts to hit them. When I say it starts to hit them, I'm talking about when family members pass, when people that you love and you think that you should have held a close relationship, they inevitably one day leave, and you realize you should have preserved that a lot more. And why that is, I think there's a wonderful, wonderful quote by Neil deGrasse Tyson that I think is really pertinent to this, I suppose, argument. And I will quote it now, if I may. He says, "There's been about 100 billion people who have ever lived on this earth. Do you know how many people can exist? You take a look at the genes and find how many combinations of genes can make an authentic human being, and it is stupendously a larger number than the 100 billion. What it means that you are alive against stupendous odds. You are breathing air, observing sunsets, gazing into the night sky. Most people who could exist will never experience that. Most people that could exist mathematically will never actually exist You are as special a living entity as there ever was. And I think that pretty much just sums up about this entire point that I'm making. There have been so many people that could have had the chance to live, but they don't even know that. They do not even understand the idea of existing and being alive in this time, now on Earth. And to be completely honest, let's say you're talking about my generation, right? We may live to 90 plus, maybe 100 if we're lucky with the current, state of medical care nowadays. 100 years, let's say, 100 years. The universe itself, since the Big Bang, is only about 13.8 billion years old, right? Only about 13.8 billion years, and your lifespan from being born into this world and dying as an elderly individual, you have 100 years. That is minuscule in the sense of time and the universe itself. So when people go into space, and they often talk about the overlook, or oversight overlook. I think it's the overlook effect, and they realize, oh, it's so precious. They're being very real about it, and I would definitely like to remind you all that, you know, every single one of us is living an existence unique to our own, and that will probably never ever be replicated again, right? So with that in mind, let's go back to love, right? If you have such a short and precious existence, why are we not attempting to live it to the absolute fullest? And when that comes to love, many opportunities in love will only appear once, maybe twice if you're lucky, right? But oftentimes, people will be scared off by the risks that they have to take. And I think, in my personal regard, especially during the courting phase, I say courting. I absolutely hate the word situationship. I think it is a ridiculous Gen Z construct. I prefer the word courting. Call me old-fashioned, but I'm on the other side of the screen. You can't touch me. Yes, so particularly in the courting phase, I think there's two major risks in a relationship. And that is the prospect of actually talking to the person, but it is one of the biggest risks that you have to take, believe me. And B, making a judgment on where the relationship will go, and I mean that in to elevating the relationship to the next level, perhaps, and naturally that is beyond what I call the courting phase. And so these are the two biggest risks, and I think there's a lot of more, and there's a patchwork of risks that you have to take in between. And this is why I said before that love inherently is a massive art, a massive act of taking risks. Because think about it. Besides those two, very massive risks, and ones that will often take all, if not all, of your confidence, 110% maybe, aided with, if you're over 18, alcohol or some other thoughts during the night at 3 a.m. There's the like I said, the patchwork quilt, I should say, of all the little risks that you take in between, make up the entire picture. And each and every single one of these contributes to where obviously the relationship and the interaction will go. And that is as simple as deciding how long after their text should you text back. Seriously, that's a risk in itself if you think about it. If you text back in, let's say, 30 seconds, to you it might seem too desperate, right? To them, you might seem too desperate, so that's bad. 5 minutes, sure. Or if you want to, go further, say, okay, I will allow 2 to 3 hours. Then you consider the risk. You're like, okay, well, maybe I'm showing that I'm disinterested, right? So things like these, and also what are some other kinds of risk? You have, when, let's say, the conversation is starting to dry out a little, as it does, because naturally, as we move into the modern age of dating and everything becomes more digitized, we often resort to very, let's say, elementary questions, just to keep the conversation going, because we haven't, we don't know the other person in real life. We'd have no interaction with them oftentimes, and we have no clue. We have no presence in their life whatsoever, so we can't even make that personal connection. And after everything is all said and done and it's all nice, and what hobbies have you got, what career do you want, how are you in terms of this and that, do you play an instrument, all of these, after these are done, what do you do from there, right? Well, we have to inevitably resort to introducing new topics into the conversation. Now, which ones will you choose to introduce, right? Which ones, once you introduce, the other person's gonna go, well, that guy's weird, or oh, that girl's weird, I'm not talking to them, right? That's a risk in itself. So that's my whole point today, right? Love is a massive act of taking risks, big and small. And what is the way that we can approach it properly then? And the most fundamental underlying facet that underpins all of everything I just said is confidence, right? In love, there is nothing worse than being not confident in yourself. And in fact, if you're not confident, then you will not take risk and nothing will happen. That's literally the way it is. Me personally, over these 2 years, I have, like I said before, I've had my fair share of experiences these 2 years. And what I've genuinely learnt after that massive period of time from year 7 to year 10 or something, when I was just an immature little kid, many things in life, just a shot of confidence will take you really far. And obviously this connects to when I was saying before about how love is ephemeral and it's beautiful because it is, so that's why you should go for it. And so that's why I'm telling you to be confident, because no matter what happens, what has happened is beautiful. It's either a lesson for yourself and it just wasn't meant to be, or it goes to places that you will never imagine, right? And to be completely honest, I've had a lot of stories where just a singular, okay, in 2025, that's probably just a text, right? A DM. A singular DM will take you places and on a saga that you never thought you might have with this person. So you got to be confident in life. That's how many opportunities slip away. But on the flip side, though, I think the flip side of the entire arguments before about how everything is precious in life and we should be, treasuring that, is you cannot spend all your time on something that you love and treasure, right? That sounds paradoxical to what I was saying before, but I think it's really an idea of learning to move on. Life continues, right? Time does not stop for anybody. There is always a tomorrow waiting, right? It is currently 10:43 at the time I'm filming this. I will have to go to bed and I will have to wake up, just like all of you out there, tomorrow morning, ready to do the stuff that I'm meant to do, whether that be math, whether that be flying somewhere in the flight simulator. I don't know, right? There is always a tomorrow and life will continue, and before you know it, you're going to be old and on your deathbed. All right? Sorry, that's a little bit nihilist, but yeah, seriously, time goes really fast. And this is a strong message to a lot of the people that I've talked to over these past few weeks. You must learn to move on, whether that's from failure, that's from setback, whether that is from rejection in love. Please learn to move on. Life is precious, so we should treasure the things that we love and adore and the things that should be treasured. But time and life in itself is precious, right? We cannot waste our times on the things that we know that is probably going to be a dead end for us. So why are you spending more time on that? I don't know. Okay. And with that, I would like to address, particularly in love, right? The romance and things. That is not an invitation for you to be flippant of other people's feelings, right? I'm not authorizing, nor am I endorsing the idea of being what people consider, like, say, For guys, it's a playboy or an F-boy, right? There is no nobility, my friends. There is absolutely no nobility and no reputation to gain from being able to boast that you treat others like objects. Absolutely no nobility, right? Does not make you seem any more powerful, any more confident, right? I think it's promptly a absolutely stupid stereotype and a preconception that modern society has made out of people, particularly in love. There is absolutely no nobility in hurting other people's emotions, right? The very action, well, I suppose the very basis of love itself is built on emotion and feelings. By smearing them and breaking them down and treating others' emotions like they're not worth your time, there is absolutely no glory in doing that, right? So what I'm saying here is you need to learn to move on, right? In a moderate amount of time. I'm not saying that you have the authority to treat nothing seriously, right? There is always a spectrum in life. There is always, always, always a spectrum in life, and it is very worth in finding the right balance in between that. But don't be flippant is the first part of that line. But the second part is, but rather play the fool's game, in the sense that that is what I was talking about before. The fool's I suppose I've kind of twisted the meaning of the fool's game a little bit here, in the sense that a fool's game, idiomatically, I should say, refers to something that is fruitless, right? A pursuit that is absolutely not of, that will end up with no result. And I suppose that is kind of what I was talking about before. But the fool's game here, I want to expand on it a bit more, in the sense that nothing in life is completely serious, right? And I adamantly stand by that. Nothing in life is ever that serious. There are many things that are serious, right? Like I said before, spectrum to these type of things, right? But it is nothing in this life that is absolutely most important, right? Most serious, and if it fails or if some particular results come out, then your life is over. Like I said before, life continues. There will always be the next morning. There will always be another day that you have to wake up and go do and continue on with life. So when big things happen, say big stir-ups, right? You've had a relationship for a very long time, and suddenly you break up, right? Move on. Move on. Jesus Christ. Move on. Alright? I'm telling this to the camera right now. Move on. Okay? Life is far too precious for you to be pining away for some person, right? Some other individual in this world of what is it 8 billion? I don't even know. How many people are in the world? Move on. Okay? Nothing in this world is ever that serious. And I want you to realize that. So treat setbacks as such, right? Okay. But how does that apply to life within itself, right? That's just love. But what I personally believe is that there is a life after a life after a life after a life, and it continues, right? What I'm not talking about is our time after we die, I suppose, on our mortal plane. I'm talking about making use of the time that we have in these, let's say, generous 100 years, right? When I say there is a life after a life after a life, it is perhaps the juvenile, opinion that some adults seem to abhor, but what I believe is personally very important. You have the agency to change your life, right? Obviously, that intersects with the whole idea of determinism and all those other, fun philosophies. And I think that's better reserved, exploring that complex relationship in a later episode. But particularly for this, you definitely have the opportunity. I personally believe that you have the opportunity to change, well, what is essentially destiny, right? I think with enough effort and time and the correct opportunities and luck and many other different factors, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to live a whole other life. When I say a life after a life after a life. For me, that's pretty important. I want to study aerospace engineering in uni, but after I come out of it, I'm most likely, and I think with probably 75% probability, that I'm going to completely do a 360 and, well, actually not too much of a 360, but yeah, go and become a pilot. That's always been the plan, and I don't see why I couldn't do that. All right. So when I say that, there is always the opportunity to make results and to make something new out of what you think is unchangeable, right? And that applies to a lot of different things, but people definitely need to realize that a lot of people will try and vie for something stable. People will try and go for what is the most often what is the most easiest and what is the most obvious to them, right? And we see that obviously a lot in particularly in my school. In most of the people that listen to these podcasts, not these podcasts, this podcast, a lot of them, when I chat to, classmates and schoolmates at school, for those who don't technically have, let's say, a direction that they're going towards, they're fighting tooth and nail to get 0.95s in order to go to some university, to get as high as score as possible, just so they can do medicine. And obviously I talked about this in episode 4, but there is always the chance to try out something new, and that is what I really want to emphasize to people, in the sense that a lot of people think that to life there's only really one definition of success, but there is so many different definitions of success. Not just doctors and lawyers are the most noble professions, and I think some people need to realize that. But yeah, I suppose there's always the chance to start over, and oftentimes people won't realize that, right? People will chalk I suppose much less in the longer run, but particularly in the little goals along the way, which you kind of see as a pass fail. Did you pass this exam, right? Did you do good in your task 2, which will then contribute to that later goal of getting whatever ATAR you want. People see these failures, these setbacks, right? And it whittles them down. It breaks people down a lot, and I hate to see it, because I see a lot of people lose, I suppose, their spark and everything, because they think that this setback is done. But what is naturally always the most important, and this sounds really basic, but I think people really need to hear this. There's always the chance to start over. There's always the chance to continue, and oftentimes it is what we must do, right? Perseverance. And so bouncing off of that, and also in conjunction of what I was saying before, people need to learn to give all of yourself to something. And no matter what happens, you will at least have the contentment of knowing that you have given it all, right? I've said the word oftentimes way too much today. I'm getting self-aware, guys. Jeez. But what is often reflected in, say, end-of-life biographies, and oftentimes by I'm saying oftentimes, by people on their deathbeds, regrets are defined as what people have not done, right? Regrets are what people have failed to have the confidence in doing. So, especially pertaining to love, right? You're gonna sit there 2 months later, and somebody's profile that you were crushing on is going to come back out, and you're going to, darn, I wish I could have taken that opportunity at some event or something that had some connection to me, and I wish I could have popped up, say hi, and taken the chance. That will come back to bug you, and that will become a regret. So that's why I'm telling you all to take risks, right? Go into life with the idea that nothing is unachievable, right? It is up to heaven to know whether everything you try will be successful, but at least by the end you will know that you have tried absolutely everything under the sun to do it. And so, with that, in doing so, often the happiest existence is, well, continuing on, like I said before, the fool's game, right? Just there is always, more stuff, more life that you have yet left to live. So, with that prospect, just continue. Take a sleep, take a nap, have some good food, and continue. And so, nothing, and I suppose the final message and what sums up all of this spiel at some points very elementary. I don't know where I was going for today. The idea that nothing ever matters that much, and it never will. That's it. I probably could have said that at the start, and you wouldn't have to listen to half an hour of me yapping at a camera. Camera, yes, visual. So nothing will ever matter that much, and it never ever will. There you go. Congratulations, you've solved the purpose of the purpose of life. And I'm not saying that is the meaning of life, because like I said before, in, was it episode 3, episode 4, the meaning of life is whatever you make of it, right? Everybody starts out with just living, and on the way you'll find things that give you purpose to your existence, which is good. But always remember, and I think, yeah, like I've had far too many people, seriously, far too many people these few weeks that I've talked to, interacted with, and they really need to hear that, in the sense that nothing in this world is genuinely that important and that significant, and we have to learn to continue. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all I'm saying for today. And yeah, I'm sorry that you had to listen to me have that whole long winded spiel. And I promise, that obviously, like I said before, there's so much more to unpack about love. And do I have the right to give my opinion on it? I think I do. I think I do. Just because I've only had one relationship properly in the past doesn't mean I don't have opinions about everything, right? And I believe me, I have many other stories to tell. It's just I focusing on bigger goals and dreams now, right? Uni though, that's a whole different story. where Dylan Guo, what Dylan Guo does in uni, that is a whole other story to what he is doing currently. So yeah, I get hyped for that, I suppose. What shall I talk about next? I don't know. With this new visual format, it would actually be really fun to have guest speakers come in. I already know a few friends that are very adamant on trying to get on this podcast, and naturally, I definitely want to discuss some things with them, and I think there are quite a few people that will inject quite a bit of life into what is now a 5-episode podcast. Yay, 5-episode anniversary, nearly halfway to 10. So, and I think you guys have probably heard enough from this guy, right? And to be completely honest, I think I've changed styles every single episode. Last episode I changed to theme music, which hopefully, if you've noticed, that's one of my favorite songs. It's Maria Takeuchi's Plastic Love. If you love city pop. But yeah, so today, big changes, and hopefully by next week, a lot more big changes. Not next week, next episode, because I don't know when next episode is. But yeah, I think this visual format is a lot more liberating for me. It allows me to, I suppose, express a lot more with not just my voice, but also actions, expressions. You guys tell me, do you guys like this? Would you guys like something different? I don't know. But at least for this episode, let's consider this a first trial of the visual format. But yeah, it's getting to about 11 p.m. I think I've talked enough for tonight, and I think you guys have had enough of a barrage. I think today has been a more spirited podcast than what has been before. I remember I did episode 4 or episode 3, whichever one of them, which seems that I'm talking really softly. I did that at like 12:30 a.m. here, by the way. So I was tired. I suppose I just had some stuff to say. But tonight, very lively, obviously. And I hope you guys will be able to bear with me, and I hope I haven't lost much of my audience by being the energetic and excited Dylan this time round. But right, well, has been a first of many of firsts, first of many, first of many. So let's hope that the visual hasn't, the camera hasn't stopped working, and let's hope that there's not crazy sound differences when I move my head like this. It's probably going to be that, and I'm gonna have to edit that. But yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me for Fly the Line episode 5. Today has been Love, Life, and the Fool's Game of Existence, which was just a very long excuse for me rattling off about different things. But yeah, remember, nothing in life really matters that much, so, move on. And yeah, so I guess I will see you guys in episode 6, and hopefully, with a new guest speaker. So, see you later.